Hello, Steve Hart, so well, I've been watching a lot of my horror movie franchises, but something I didn't realize is I have quite a few older horror movies that I hadn't really watched, or I couldn't remember watching them because a lot of them I bought at like $2 shops and like, oh, horror movie, and because a lot of them had moved out of their copyright period, so they're just sort of being produced by anyone, and they were cheap to produce. So I ended up with a selection of Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi movies because I've got the old Universal movies that they were in because of course Bela Lugosi played Dracula and Boris Karloff played Frankenstein, but they also did a bunch of films after that because they kind of got typecast. And there was a while in the 40s when they teamed up and they did about 8 films together. They were really successful. Like the first film that I want to review, look at, is the Black Cat, and there is a literal black cat in this film, but it's not the villain of the piece or anything. The main character played by Bela Lugosi is afraid of black cats, and they paralyze him in fear, basically. So the first film is called The Black Cat, and it is interesting. It starts off with a young married couple, which is something you see quite often in these films, traveling, and they meet this guy who has been in a war and been in a like internment camp for years, and he's finally out and he's going to visit a friend who's an architect. And they transfer to a bus. The bus crashes. They end up all being taken to this architect's mansion, which is like this over-the-top Bond villain lair. And the Bela Lugosi character, the Boris Karloff character, I hope I don't interchange these names too much, because I just associate them together. The Boris Karloff character is very over the top. He wears very weird clothes and he's very surreal. The Bela Lugosi character is a bit more relatable, but he basically is there, to find out what happened to his wife, because he thinks this guy not only betrayed his people and caused the death of a lot of people, he also believes he kidnapped or killed his wife and daughter. And he's there pretending to be friends to reunite, but he's really trying to work out what happened to his wife and his daughter. Now, we see that Boris actually has the wife's body preserved in his lair, and eventually Bela is convinced that his wife and daughter have both been killed, so he's mourning them. And the wife who's the wife from the young couple, who's been passed out since the accident, she wakes up and encounters the daughter, who's also named Karen. Both the wife and the daughter of Bela Lugosi's character were named Karen, which is confusing for a moment or two. She encounters her and lets him know that she's alive. So then he confronts Boris, and basically they have this big fight, and it's very dramatic and very complicated, some of the scenarios I won't go through. But eventually they burn down the lair, and the two of them are killed, and the couple escape, and they're reading a book, which a review of a book which was written by one of them, or one of the characters, and they're sort of reading how the reviewer was saying how over the top the story was and unbelievable, and they're both just sitting there like staring at it like, we just lived a story that melodramatic and over the top. And it's kind of a nice funny little ending. Now the second film, The Corpse Vanishes, it's about a bunch of women who, when they're getting married, they die on the altar, basically. And what's happening is Bela Lugosi's character is sending them flowers, corsages or whatever, or wedding bouquets or something, and they are poisoned. And when they breathe them, smell them in, breathe it in, they basically go into comas, and then the bodies are stolen and they're used to rejuvenate a female that Bella is, I don't know if it's an ex or just a love, and they're basically being used to keep her alive. Eventually there's a very Lois Lane like very progressive female character who works this all out, and she sets up another a female who's an actor to basically play a wife getting married so they can catch him. And it doesn't quite go as planned, but they do eventually catch Bella. He gets done in, and everything. Everybody lives happily ever after, and it was a lot of fun. Now the third film white zombie. Um, it was good. It's got one problematic element which I mentioned right up front. There is a character who's supposed to be black who he's played by a white character in actor in blackface, which is weird because these films have black characters played by black actors. So I don't know why they did blackface with this one actor. But it does kind of ruin the film. But aside from that, um, it's fun. Basically, this young couple is traveling again to some foreign land, and they encounter um, voodoo. And this woman is she's sort of drinking wine at her wedding, and she sees Bela Lugosi's face in the reflection. And then he like puts her in a trance, and she basically dies, and she's buried. But then his people, he's got a little cult. They come and get the body and take her, and the husband is haunted by her image and believes she's still alive. He finds her, but she's a zombie. Eventually, what happens is he confronts Bela Lugosi and kills Bela Lugosi, and then the wife returns back to normal, and they live happily ever after. But the zombie stuff is interesting because there are actually true cases of people who've been drugged and put in comas, buried, and then dug up, and then they were sort of left in states of brain damage and coma, and were basically used as zombies. And it's a thing that was done back in the day. Apparently, zombies are real. Um, that's all interesting and fun, and it's very dramatic staging, very theatrical. And aside from the blackface, it was a good film, and it's a pity about that. I don't quite know how to manage that. Now, unfortunately, the next film I watched, Barry at Midnight, was boring. It's just Bela Lugosi plays a guy who's running a mission, and there's a very prim and proper nurse who's volunteering when, according to her boyfriend, she should be marrying him and giving up all her dreams. But she discovers that he's actually killing people on the side for his business and burying them under the mission. And she finds that out. He ends up being caught by the police, and she survives. And then she ends up just marrying her douchey boyfriend who just wanted to do that in the first place. And that's kind of the whole story. So that wasn't very interesting. I don't think I'll be keeping that one, because I'm never going to watch that again. But then the last film, The Invisible Ghost, was kind of interesting. Bela Lugosi plays and these are all Bela Lugosi films, basically. Boris Karloff's only in the first one. He plays a man whose wife disappeared, and he's basically living with his servants, and people start dying, and they don't know why people are dying on his grounds, and he keeps seeing the ghost of his wife in the distance on the grounds and all that, and each time it happens he goes into like a trance and freaks out. And this is one of the films where they actually have a black guy playing the butler, and he's got a fairly strong character, and even experiences racism in the film that you see when he's being questioned and that. And it's interesting because it's very progressive, I would have thought, I think this film is 1930 something. I probably should have checked the dates. Yeah, they're all in the 30s and 40s, so it seemed fairly progressive for that time. Yeah, eventually what you realise is that the wife was injured in an accident. She's not dead. So when she comes back to the property, she's not a ghost. She's actually the real person, and he keeps seeing her and thinking she's a ghost. And he goes into these trances, and he's committing the murders. But eventually she comes into the house to realise she's not a ghost, she's a person, and they see him going into one of these trances and realise that he's actually doing the murders. So they solve who's doing the murders. It's him while he's in a trance state, while he's being haunted by his wife, who isn't actually a ghost, who's actually real, but she's just brain damaged from an accident. So it's all these films are all very melodramatic and complicated, but they're interesting. They keep you, drawn in, because they're aside from Barry at Midnight, which is boring. They all have these over the top characters, very dramatic, but they're not camp. And it's funny because films now are afraid to be entertaining because they don't want to be seen as camp or over the top or predictable or what people want to see, and they just make films no one wants to see. And these films are fun. I would watch these again, except for Barry at Midnight, it was boring. But the others were all a lot of fun, and these actors just weren't afraid to just go just full on and create these big characters and these big stories that you'd have to see to believe, which is sort of the joke at the end of the other film. But I really enjoyed them, and I'm going to try and hunt down the rest of their films, because they made a lot of these films, and I've only got a few of them. but a lot of them, fortunately, because they're older, they're easy to get because they've slipped out of copyright and anyone can produce them. So they're not limited just like really expensive special editions or something like the Dracula and Frankenstein films from the Universal monsters and all that. So yep, I had fun. I'm glad these films hold up. Some people can't watch old films. They can't watch black and white films. Like they can only watch films from like their era, which is really sad. I studied all these films in cinema classes at film school and that doing a film course. So I can I can watch films from like the 1901 right up to like today, and I don't notice the difference. So I'm glad, because some people can't, and some people like Robert Meyer Burnett consider it a skill to watch films that aren't like colour or aren't modern. Yeah, so either way, I enjoyed them. I'm going to look for more, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy them and do more reviews of them.